Fasten your seatbelts for the realest Eagles and Sixers YouTuber! One who plays no clickbait and gets to the point! The myth, the legend, Nicky Steves! Come to my channel, you know the deal. Yo, boy, always keeps things real. I'm simply statue, think they slate, dropping unrealistic man, 2K takes for the clip. Even though cats like that get views closer to the milli, never hear me preach, slip on to Philly. Avoid you watching the Eagles all the way through the early 22. Authentic talk, forget what others do. Come to my channel, you know the deal. Yo, boy, always keeps things real. The 24/7, 365 way. Sports content for the reals that fill the day. Good morning, folks. It is right around noon Eastern Standard Time here. It is episode 35 of the 3-Point Blitz, folks. We started this off initially on a Sunday night back in March, around March Madness time. Then we went to Mondays. Then we went to Tuesdays at 11:30. Now we're Tuesdays at noon. This is something I plan on keeping going because I notice it's better for the views and then more people get to enjoy it. So that's a double win right there. Win for my views and a win for you guys because you guys get, it's more flexible with your time to enjoy it. So without any further ado, we're going to start off episode 35 with the usual rant of the week. But this rant of the week is going to be a little bit different than usual. Now, usually around this time of year, you know, we strictly football, but there's going to rant about a proposed NBA trade. Now, I've been looking around on social media. I've seen the proposal of Anthony Davis, potentially the NBA mock trades, the NBA Trade Center on IG. It's been proposed that Anthony Davis potentially join the Chicago Bulls because, you know, Anthony Davis is from around the Chicago area. Now, I kind of get where it's coming from, the idea of, okay, you take an Anthony Davis, a guy who, mind you, he was from the area, could help sell tickets to the Bulls games. There is that potential there. But on the flip side, it really wouldn't do much because if the Bulls were going to get Anthony Davis, a guy who was in and out of the lineup and getting to the later stage of his career, they'd have to give up a lot to get him. And the Chicago Bulls are a relatively mediocre team in recent years. They're constantly in the play-in tournament, and that's been their ceiling in recent years with Nikola Vucevic and Zach LaVine. Now Vucevic is the main guy left from that big three that never was with LaVine, Vucevic, and Lonzo Ball. Remember that? That was the big three that never really was. They had 1 year they actually made it to the playoffs. They got bounced by the, at the time, defending champ Milwaukee Bucks in the opening round. Lonzo's injuries caught up to him. LaVine and Vucevic put up decent offensive stats, but they were never good enough as a team. Now, supposedly this mock trade, here's what it would have. It would be Mavs sending Anthony Davis to the Bulls near his hometown area, but the Bulls would have to give up Kobe White, Patrick Williams, Zach Collins, and their unprotected first-round pick. So that would be really stupid right there. Even for the Chicago Bulls, who have made a lot of questionable decisions in the front office right there. I understand it sounds like a fun idea, but you guys got to at least be a little bit realistic with these mock trades. Come on, guys. Even by Chicago Bulls standards, that would be stupid. What, you're getting nothing in return for Anthony Davis in this proposed scenario. I mean, I'm a Sixers fan, but even I got to look at that and be like, come on. I bet you Bulls fans saw that and were probably gobsmacked by the idea and were like, nah, I'd rather keep the core we got. I mean, look, I get it. Sometimes people do stuff that have fun. They've had fun. They do it to put out content, get people talking. I get it. As a content creator, you try to have fun, put out some proposed scenarios, get people talking, but at least try to be somewhat realistic with these scenarios. Here's an example. Here we go. We got a big example right there. There was one mock trade that I could see potentially happening. It was proposed the Jazz trade Lauri Markkanen, Pistons give up Tobias, Jaden Ivey, Paul Reed, for 2 first-round picks in the future. I could see something like that happening, maybe. Now, do I think it would be the smartest move by the Pistons? Not quite, because the Pistons, while they're really good so far this season, they haven't proved that they're championship contender worthy yet. To make a big trade like that, you go all in for one player. You've got to be a team that at least is on the cusp or one player away. And while the Pistons are a good team, I don't know if they're quite one player away. So while that seems like a fun idea, maybe on 2K, marketing and Cade Cunningham playing together, I don't know if the Pistons are ready to contend yet and give up that much for one player. Like, to me, in order to make those trades, like some of these proposed trades, you have to be one player away. Like the Lakers, when they went and snagged Pau Gasol. They had Kobe. They were good enough to get through the regular season, but they needed that one extra piece to help them, and that ended up being Pau Gasol. So in that case, it worked. Like the Miami Heat. They had Dwayne Wade. They needed that one extra player to help them out, and that ended up being Shaq. And they did win a championship. So sometimes you gotta be that one player away. Like the Lakers when they got AD. They needed that one player for LeBron, and it worked. But I don't think the Pistons are quite ready there. While marketing in Cunningham could be fun to watch, they haven't had the postseason success to prove they're just one player away and they can afford to give up some of their role players. Especially this early in the season when the Pistons are on a roll with the core they have. Do you really want to give that up? But back to the AD one to the Bulls was the dumbest, because the Bulls would be getting nothing in return beside Anthony Davis, just to maybe sell some tickets to their home games, and that's about it. You give up Kobe White in that trade, which, even though they're relatively mediocre, you'd be in a worse position long term with Vucevic and AD 1-2, not knowing if AD is going to play or not. What's that going to do, especially for a Bulls team? I mean, I could see if you were giving up this and you were getting a pick or two in return, but that's just an unrealistic proposal right there. It doesn't make sense. And for the Mavs to get one extra pick, but what is Kobe White really going to do to move the needle? Don't get me wrong, but Kobe White hasn't been that great on his own, so it just doesn't. I mean, he hasn't been a real needle mover for the Bulls yet, so you're just taking him from one situation and putting him to another similar situation. Taking him from one mediocre situation to, at best, another mediocre situation. So it's just one of those things, guys. Be a little more realistic with that. So with that being said, that's the rant of the week. Now we're going to move on. This is where we get into the fun part, where we actually talk about some football. Folks, that's right. And we're going to do what we usually do, kick it off talking about the Thursday night. The New England Patriots rocking some alternative jerseys against the New York Jets. And I ain't gonna lie. These alternative jerseys for the Patriots, this different shade of blue, actually look decent on them as a uniform. Unlike most of these recent alternative uniforms, they have not been that good. But to be fair, the Patriots actually did rock some decent alternatives in this one. And I give them props. And not only that, but they actually rocked, particularly their rookie running back, Trayvon Henderson, actually rocked a good performance to go along with those uniforms. And in this one, he had 2 touchdowns in this one. He only had 62 yards and 19 carries, but the 2 touchdowns helped out, made a difference. And Henderson, look, he's not having the greatest statistical season in the world, but I've noticed with Trayvon Henderson, he started to catch on recent weeks, and the Patriots are starting to find a gem at running back to go along with Drake May, which could really help them out going forward. I mean, it already is this year. Look, Patriots are now in great position. They're standing at this. They're 9-2 right now. Who would have thought going into the season New England Patriots would stand at 9-2? I was thinking maybe at best I could see middle of the first round pick for 2026, thinking that the Patriots would probably be better in the win-loss column, but still not make the playoffs. Instead, Patriots are 9-2, sitting atop the AFC, and it helps that you're going against the Jets. But once again, the New England Patriots did what they've done all season. They win the games they're supposed to. They find ways to win. You had a nice, Drake May didn't make any mistakes. He had near 300 yards, had a touchdown. Stephon Diggs showed that he can still be a valuable weapon in the passing game in this one. 9 receptions, 105 yards. They took advantage of that Jets team with nothing and cruised along to a win to keep that momentum going. Maybe possibly for home field advantage in the playoffs. Who knows? Maybe the New England Patriots do get home field advantage in the playoffs. But as of right now, though, they're 9-2, and they're a top threat in the AFC this season. Especially, this is a real interesting season in the AFC. You're talking about a year where Kansas City's looking relatively mediocre. More on that later. You got them. You got the Ravens have started to catch on a little bit lately. Maybe they couldn't beat out the Steelers to narrowly win the AFC North, but they're not looking like a juggernaut either. The Bills are still in contention, but they haven't been able to win big in the playoffs, so AFC is kind of wide open this year. The New England Patriots are just one of those teams, as well as the Indianapolis Colts, who are on their bye week this week. And then you got the Denver Broncos, who beat the Kansas City Chiefs in one of those kind of prove it, let's see how good you really are type of games. And they delve more on that later, but AFC's wide open. There's a lot of parity in that conference this year. And the Patriots sit atop of that conference, potentially looking at home field advantage in the playoffs. But we still got to wait and see how it plays out throughout Thanksgiving, going into the holiday season. Then we'll see where it goes from there. But as of right now, the New England Patriots have won, and they're sitting at 9-2. It was against the Jets, but hey, a win's a win. You did so in impressive fashion, and that's great for momentum heading into the later portion of the season, because next week's the weekend before Thanksgiving, so we're getting a little bit closer to Turkey Day, which is when the season really picks up. So big win for the Patriots. Props to them. I like what you see. You see the culture change came in, how Mike Vrabel brought a fresh perspective to the Patriots. And we continue to see week after week, they're doing awesome. Drake May's having himself a really good season. Probably going to get the Pro Bowl nod this year. I don't think he's necessarily going to get the MVP nod. To me, I'm looking more toward Jonathan Taylor. But we'll talk more about the MVP discussion as we get later in the season. But as of now, nice job, though, by the Patriots getting the win, taking care of business. And their defense is a pretty solid bunch, too, in this one. I mean, they held the Jets down, kept them in check. But ultimately, at the end of the day, Patriots got the win, 27-14. They beat up on that Jets team with nothing. It's kind of crazy that Tom Brady has more wins in the 2020s than the Jets when this is Brady's third season out of the league. But we're not going to ramble on too long about this one. Good performance by the Patriots in their offense. Moving right along. The Miami Dolphins. Well, hey, they won. I give them that. They went out there overseas in Madrid, and they got the victory over the Commanders in a sloppy game. A game that last year, when the schedule was put, you thought would have been a competitive game, but became more of a tank bowl instead. And the Commanders win the tank. But I'm afraid this says more about how the Commanders have fallen off from last season. And they're sitting at 3-8. They're going back to business per usual over in Washington. It's like that season last year never even happened. At least the way they're playing, it feels that way. Now, the main reason is because Jaden Daniels is out. Jaden Daniels is out. They don't have him. They do have, and they've been stuck with Marcus Mariota, and they're the oldest team in the NFL currently. That's part of their big problem, is they got way too many veterans when they really need some younger players. The problem with Washington is they become too reliant on veterans, and they relied on last year. Let's be honest, it was a carry job by Jaden Daniels that got this team to the conference championship game and paved way for my team to beat them. But that magical run was in part due to Jaden Daniels' awesome play. Now this year, you haven't seen much from him, and it's crazy. They have 3 wins. Jaden Daniels hasn't played much, but when he did play, they were still finding ways to win games. And I remember at the time, even myself included, we were kind of on Jaden Daniels about, oh, well, he's not playing as good as he did last year. He's not playing as good as his rookie season. But to be fair, they still won a few more games with him. So you can clearly see the difference here. I really believe if Jaden Daniels had started in this game, this could have been a winnable game for Washington. So you could say he was bound to hit a sophomore slump, even if he wasn't injured, and maybe to some degree that's true. But do you see how bad the Commanders look without him? He, even for the limited time he did play this year, where he wasn't playing as well as last year, was still making more of a positive difference than what we're seeing now. I'll tell you that for sure. So I'm sorry, man. But Jaden Daniels, man, but you can tell they miss him sorely. And for the Miami Dolphins, I mean, the Miami Dolphins now have won a couple straight games. They got an upset last week against their division rival, the Buffalo Bills. And they came back and win this week. Now they're sitting at 4-7. But honestly, this might seem good in the short term. It might look good it looks better on the record book to say you're 4-7. You still theoretically have a chance, but I don't see it happening. This may look decent on theory to win 2 straight, but is this really going to help the Dolphins in the long haul? Really, is it? Because you're looking at a tight race for the playoff picture. Even if the Dolphins start winning some games, maybe they go on a little mini winning streak headed into the holiday season. They kind of crawl back into the still alive picture by the holidays. This is just hypothetically, if this happens. The odds are still heavily stacked against the Dolphins to make the playoffs, even if they miraculously go on a winning streak now. So I don't think this really helps them that much. Even though 2 wins looks nice on paper, it's not really doing them any favors. And not to mention, this was a boring game. I mean, notice I'm talking more about how the teams that performed this season than the actual game itself, because this was just a boring game. Filled with field goals, only 2 touchdowns the entire game. One from Ole Gordon, running back for the Dolphins, and the other came on a Marcus Mariota pass to Deebo Samuel Sr., and that's it. Other than that, it was just a field goal fest. Dolphins beat the Commanders, and we're going to move on from there. Now, this next game is an interesting game. It was 2 tales here. One, a tale of a team who, got an unexpected win, but another team who took a big loss, and that's the Jaguars versus the Chargers. Now, the Jacksonville Jaguars, in this case, to their credit, they rebounded with a win. They keep their wild card hopes alive in this case, and I'll give them props on that. And they were shorthanded, too. Shorthanded Travis Hunter, and yet they still found a way to dethrone and demolish the Los Angeles Chargers in a big upset win. So I got to give Liam Cohen and the Jaguars credit. On the other hand, though, not to take anything away from them. I'm not taking anything away from them. Congrats to the Jaguars. But part of what helped was the Chargers' shorthanded offensive line came back to bite them in this one, plain and simple. Herbert was constantly under pressure. He looked sluggish back there on 18 passes. He only had 81 yards and a pick. That's because he was constantly under pressure. They gave up 3 sacks, but, I mean, he's lucky he was only 3 sacks, but he was constantly getting hurried, and they didn't have much to go with. Especially, this is the second time in 3 games that battered offensive line played a role in the outcome. Even had to bring in Trey Lance for a little bit, and for Trey Lance, you bring in a backup quarterback with little experience behind a battered offensive line. Only went 3 for 8 for 37 yards. What did you really think he was going to do in this situation? I mean, and then you're talking about, and again, for the second time in 3 weeks, Justin Herbert was the lead rusher for the Chargers. For a team that heavily relies on their running backs, going with a quarterback who's more known for being somewhat of a traditional pocket passer is not helping them out in this case. So there's that. But for the Jaguars, though, not going to take credit away. This was a good team win here. And their run game really got going against this Chargers defense, too. So it wasn't just the battered Chargers offensive line. The Jaguars offense made some noise on the ground game here. You got Byshul Tootin had 74 yards on 15 carries, followed by Etienne 19 on 73. The Jaguars did an excellent job running the ball and using that to take control on the offensive side and wear down that Chargers defense or whatever's left of it. And the lead, you didn't really have to rely on the pass too much. You did get Jacoby Myers had 64 yards in the receiving, and Tim Patrick had the one passing touchdown for them, but it was mostly the aerial attack. You had 4 rushing touchdowns, 2 from Etienne, 1 from Tootin, and 1 from Trevor Lawrence. The ground attack rolled all over the Chargers offense in this one, bro. And we got Eric Phillips in the chat. Eric's happy his team won last night, defeating the Las Vegas Raiders in Vegas, 33-16. Now that's going to set up Eagles versus Cowboys next week. And we're going to wait and see on that one. And for the Jaguars, though, congrats on the victory. They get a much-needed win to help out with their odds in the AFC playoff pictures. And it really helps that Kansas City lost, too. Now, we switched to the NFC matchup. We got an NFC South matchup. The Carolina Panthers sweep the Atlanta Falcons and win this one 30-27 in overtime. This ended up for 2 teams that aren't the most exciting teams in the league, that aren't the biggest names team-wise. This ended up being an exciting offensive battle. And for the Falcons, it goes back to last week. I remember last week we had Coach Ed in the chat. He talked about Raheem Morris, about his inability to close games. And I said that the trend with the Falcons is they have good talent, but they don't have the discipline to close games as a team. Flash forward 1 week later, what happened? Again, for the second straight week, you go to overtime and you fall short. Now you're 3-7 on the season. So while the Falcons, they're competitive in their games, the bottom line is 3-7. You're not finding ways to win games. And we joke that the NFL stands for not for long. And for some of these players on the Falcons and the coaching staff, if you keep losing these games, that not for long acronym is going to come true very soon. Especially for the front office and for the coaches. In this game, you had Bryce Young throw for 3 touchdowns, had a franchise record 448 yards. And this, with all due respect to Young, this also says more about the Falcons defense because Bryce Young has not been balling out. It's been mostly the Rico Dowdle show, and the Panthers have heavily relied on their run game to get them to this point. In this game, Bryce Young, to his credit, had a really good game, but people are going to look at this and say this has more to do with the Falcons' defense giving up those yards because Bryce Young hasn't consistently dominated on offense the way he did in this one. Now, to his credit, he had 448 yards. The Panthers sit at 6-5. I mean, it's going to be tough for the Panthers to make the playoffs. You still got Tampa Bay in that leading the pack in that division. You still have a loaded race to the wild card round with the 49ers, Lions, Packers, Seahawks, and only 3 of those teams are going to get there. Because then I say those teams because as of right now, the Bears lead the NFC North, Rams lead the NFC West. But the point being is for the Panthers, while they are 6-5, it's going to be a tough battle. For them, their best shot at making the playoffs at this point is to just win out, and you'll get a little bit of luck along the way from some of those other teams losing, like the 49ers or possibly the Packers, and that's your best shot. But we still got to wait and see what happens, though. So the Panthers right now, they're in the playoff hunt, but we're not truly going to see it until around the holiday season. That's when we'll really get a better idea of the playoff picture. But for now, the Carolina Panthers, to their credit, they're at 6-5, and they've improved their win total from last year. So something's going right down there. Easy schedule, team playing better, combination of the two. Something is going right, and I can't take that away from them. So congrats to the Panthers on getting the sweep on the Falcons. And for the Falcons, I think the seat's getting hot in the front office, like I said, for Coach Moore, for the coach and some of the front office employees too. And unfortunately, their quarterback, second-year quarterback Michael Penix Jr., has been placed on IR. Now they're going to have to rely on Kirk Cousins for a little bit. We'll see how that goes for the Falcons. But we're back to the quarterback controversy that martyred their season last year. So don't be surprised if there's some big changes in Atlanta coming soon. But speaking of teams that are in the wild card race, you got the Green Bay Packers bounce back from a 2-game losing streak, upending the New York Giants by a score of 27-20. In this game, it was a much-needed win. Now, it's interesting we got to see Jameis Winston get the start. Winston did what you'd expect. Looked solid by backup quarterback standards, but ultimately it wasn't enough to win. And he did throw a pick in this one, which Jameis Winston's one of those quarterbacks where you've seen flashes of brilliance, but it was never consistent. Like one day, he'll have a really good game or a really good drive, and you'll be like, see, that was excellent there. But then later you'll see something like, oh, that's why Winston's been relegated to being a backup. But at the same time, though, for the Packers, I give them credit. They did what they needed to. We saw Jordan Love had to leave the game for a little bit, but he did come back and re-enter the game. He did have 2 touchdowns against the Giants defense, so that helped out there. And you also saw Christian Watson had 2 touchdowns. He gets 2 scores on the season. Because remember, the Watson was on IR entering the season from an injury sustained last year. So he wasn't active till about the midway point. Now he gets 2 touchdowns. And this could be great. This is an important time, though, too, for players coming back from injuries to build momentum. Especially as we say, we're getting around that Thanksgiving time. This is when the NFL season really starts to pick up. When wins and losses mean a lot more for momentum. You see last year when the Steelers started hot at 10-2, they lost a lot of games later in the season, fell to the wild card, and got bounced in the opening round. You saw last year, this was the point the eventual Super Bowl champ Eagles started to get hot, win a bunch of games in impressive fashion. That momentum carried to the playoffs. So we're kind of getting to that point where those wins and losses matter more and have a big indication on momentum. And for the Packers, now sitting at 6-3-1, you get a much-needed win to put those 2 losses behind you. And you get, like I said, for all these teams in the playoff picture, you got to start winning now. And the Packers did just that. So congrats to the Green Bay Packers. But while they do win this one against the Giants, I'm still going to wait and see how this offense goes from here. Do they continue the momentum from this Giants game? That's a question that remains to be seen. Especially that you got the Lions and Bears in that division. And the Bears have surprised everyone with yet another win, this time against the division rival, the Minnesota Vikings. Say what you want to say, but the Chicago Bears under Ben Johnson, their new head coach, are playing winning football. And that's really what matters at the end of the day. Because now, with that win, this is the big shocker. The Chicago Bears are at 7-3 in first place in the NFC North. It's crazy to think going into the season, you had the Chicago Bears, Detroit Lions, Green Bay Packers, and Minnesota Vikings all in the same division. Easily that and the NFC West, the 2 most competitive divisions in the conference. It's crazy to think the Chicago Bears, who looked like the worst team on paper, now all of a sudden they're the top team in the NFC North. But that's sometimes the fun of football, man. Sometimes all it takes is the team getting a new coach, new philosophy incorporated, and a team can instantly do a turnaround. We've seen this drill plenty of times before. We saw that work with Sean McVay with the Rams back when Goff was the QB. Remember Goff's rookie year, he struggled. They brought in a new head coach, completely turned the Rams around, and that momentum continues to this day with Coach McVay still leading the helm. Now we've seen with Ben Johnson this year, they brought in someone, the offensive coordinator from the Detroit Lions, who really played a key role in that Lions offense dominating last season, and it's playing a factor with the Bears winning games. Now, they're not as dominant on offense as the Detroit Lions are, but also you got to remember, too, they don't have the same talent on the routes that the Detroit Lions do. No disrespect to Kemp Cole, DJ Moore, Rome Odzine, and Colston Loveland and those guys on the Bears offense, but hey, they're still finding ways to win games with the talent they have. And that's what matters most here. And we saw in this one too, though, the one thing that helped the Bears, they took advantage of an inexperienced rookie quarterback. Particularly, there was an interception from Kevin Byard on defense where J.J. McCarthy made the rookie mistake of keeping his eye on his receiver the whole time. And Byard, being a veteran, read it. He saw J.J. McCarthy eyeing up his receiver for moments at a time. And that gave Byard time to get ready for the pass. And sure enough, he got the interception. So that was another factor. Sometimes, you take advantage of the mismatches and work it in your favor. And McCarthy still showing signs of making rookie mistakes. And that's part of the problem with him missing his whole rookie season for the Vikings is here you got a guy that didn't play his first season, was out injured. Now he's coming back year 2 is practically his rookie season. And, he's still, obviously he's inexperienced, so it's going to take some time for him to adjust, get used to playing at the NFL level. And you've seen that's had a negative impact on the Vikings season thus far. They're sitting at 4-6. They're the bottom of the NFC North. The odds of the Vikings making the playoffs, like I said before, you got all those different teams fighting for wild card spots that are non-division winners between the NFC North and the NFC West. The odds are not looking great this season, but not ready to throw in the towel just yet on them, but I don't think it's going to pan out this season. And for the Bears, too, another integral part of that offense is running back DeAndre Swift. DeAndre Swift with the Eagles versus the Bears. A perfect example of a player that just needed a change in scenery. It didn't really work out as great with the Eagles, but the Eagles weren't really as reliant on DeAndre Swift. Remember when they had him? He was more of a placeholder till we got Saquon. But now DeAndre Swift goes to a new team where he's being utilized more, and it's worked out in his favor. But sometimes for players, it's just that change of scenery to go to a system where they'll be utilized more, and you can see them there. So credit to the Chicago Bears and Ben Johnson for a nice turnaround in the Windy City. Getting this team to 7-3, because it seems like every time we think they're not going to do great, they find a way to win. The Houston Texans and Tennessee Titans, man. For the Texans, yes, they won this game, but even then, it just seems like it seemed like a filler game. And it feels a bit like a rhetorical segment here. But so we're just going to keep it kind of quick. It was mostly a lower scoring game as expected. Now, to be fair, the Houston Texans are at 5-5. Because even without CJ Stroud, this is a team fresh off winning the AFC South 2 straight years in a row. So there's still talent there. Even if the odds of them making the playoffs seem like a long shot, I mean, they are sitting at 5-5, so they're still not the worst team in the world. There's still potential for a turnaround. Now, I don't know if it's going to happen this year because there's a lot of competition. Just like in the NFC, both conferences, a lot of competition for a playoff spot. But the Texans win, and for the Titans, man, it's just this year is not the year for their rebuild to come in handy. They're sitting at 1-9. It's just one of those things for the Titans. They're probably just looking forward to the offseason and go back to the drawing board. So, hey, it happens. Congratulations to the Texans on the win. But now moving on, we had ourselves an interesting game. We thought going into this might be the game of the week. And sure enough, from an offensive standpoint, this was the game of the week between the Buffalo Bills and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. You had Josh Allen, Baker Mayfield, the two Buffalo Bills, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, two high-powered offenses going out, having a high-scoring game. Both teams got over 30 points. You had a combined 76 points between the two teams. With Josh Allen had 3 touchdowns. He did have 2 picks as well, and this guy, it's ironic, this seems like a vintage Josh Allen game. Because passing-wise, he had multiple TDs, few picks, but he also had 3 rushing touchdowns. So Josh Allen had 6 total touchdowns, passing and rushing in this game. And despite the 2 picks, was the MVP for this team by far. So congrats to Josh Allen on another typical Sunday. Now the Bills sit at 7-3. They can put that loss to the Dolphins behind them. They come back, beat a tough team in the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, move to 7-3, which is important, keeping pace with the Patriots for first in that NFC West. or sorry, the NFC East. Yeah, Josh Allen, absolutely amazing game, leading the way, doing what he does best. And that's what happens when Josh Allen's on his A game, finds ways for the Bills to win. Now they're sitting at 7-3. Congrats to them. And for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I give them credit. They're a good team. But the thing is, even though they are a good team and I see them winning the NFC South, I'm not necessarily sold on them being Super Bowl contenders like some people were a few weeks ago. And the reason I say that is a lot of times in big games, while they're competitive, they don't seem to find a way to win those games. And we've seen this trend go on, and this is a trend that carries over from the last couple seasons. We saw it last year against Washington when they hosted them at home in the wild card round. They put up a good effort, but Washington came away with the victory. And we've seen this consistently. Like we saw it, and we're seeing it again this year. But here against Buffalo, they go out, play a good, tough game. They make the Bills earn the victory, but they can't close the deal. The week before against the Patriots, they put up a good game. They made it competitive, but they ultimately couldn't get the win. We go back early in the season, week 4, when we beat them. Again, they put up a good fight, but the Eagles ultimately beat them. It's just, yeah, I've seen this too many times, and eventually, come playoff time, you're going to need to find a way to beat those teams. So, well, the Buccaneers are a good team. I just don't see them as contenders unless they somehow find a way to close the gap and win these big games. As of right now, I just got the Buccaneers as a good regular season team. That'll make it entertaining. It'll be fun to watch. But ultimately, the playoffs are their ceiling. And for the Buffalo Bills, well, they're in a similar situation because we've seen recent years they usually get to the playoffs but can't close the gap. But this year might be a little bit different. It might be a little bit different. Here's why. Kansas City's not looking as strong as they typically have in past seasons. With Kansas City sitting at 5-5, just fighting to make the playoffs, could this finally be the year both the Buffalo Bills have a shot in the playoffs? You got the New England Patriots, who are a good team, but we don't know what they're going to do come playoff time yet. The Indianapolis Colts are a good team, but we don't know how they're going to handle it come playoff time. Josh Allen at least has experience in the playoffs, even though Kansas City has been his kryptonite thus far. They at least consistently get to the playoffs. But maybe this year, with Kansas City not being as strong as in past years, this might finally be the year the Buffalo Bills make a Super Bowl run. That remains to be determined, but it is a possibility. And then to close it out, well, Pittsburgh Steelers beat the Cincinnati Bengals by a score of 34-12. Why am I really... It's a shame. Once again, the Cincinnati Bengals, this feels like a vague talking point that the Bengals are an all-time worst defense. And again, giving up 34 points is usually not a good sign for any defense, especially against a Pittsburgh Steelers team that has consistently struggled, that Aaron Rodgers got pulled for Mason Rudolph, and Mason Rudolph, or yes, that Mason Rudolph looked like a good quarterback for this one game. It's once again just saying more about the Cincinnati Bengals defense and just how they haven't been able to get it together. I don't know. It's just probably the way they practice, because usually it's true that you play the way you practice. And it's obvious the way the Cincinnati Bengals are playing, they're not practicing up to standards. So I'll just leave it at that. So with that being said, though, congrats to the Steelers, though, because even though it's a win against the Bengals, it's important to point out it still keeps the Steelers atop the AFC North. I mean, they got a game lead over the Ravens. Now, with the Ravens catching on late in the season, it's going to be a race. It's going to be decided by those two games head-to-head. So now with the Steelers winning and Baltimore being a game back following their win against the Browns, which I'll get to, this is more so a thing about the Steelers it's more so now just a race between the Steelers and Ravens. So we'll wait how that plays out. There's not much to say about this one. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a quick break. We'll come back, talk about the evening games. We got two big games that occurred during the evening. We're going to talk about NFC West and AFC West showdown. So I'll be right back. We'll break it down. All righty, folks, we're back from a short break. Now it's time we get into the fun games. We're going to talk about them first. So first, we're going to start off, talk about the NFC West showdown, the battle for first place in the NFC West between the Los Angeles Rams and the Seattle Seahawks. In this contest, we dealt with first those horrible Rams black uniforms. I'm sorry. Please, Rams, don't wear those uniforms again, all right? Stick with the blue or the white ones. They look a lot better. It's better from a presentation standpoint, all right? Now, but at least with the Rams, their jerseys didn't match their performance on the field because their defense played amazing in this one with 4 interceptions. That's right. Got 4 takeaways against Sam Darnold, who was by some a dark horse MVP candidate. Like I said, I wasn't sold on it, but the fact that you got 4 turnovers against a team with an excellent defense, was actually pretty solid, folks. That's actually pretty impressive, folks. So I'm going to give the Rams defense their flowers on this one. For a team that's more known for its offense, they took care of business in this one. They got 4 interceptions. The Rams offense, they were able to move the ball, but a lot of times they just couldn't close possessions. They did get on the ground. You had Kyron Williams had 12 carries, 91 yards. He got it to the end zone. Matthew Stafford still threw 2 touchdowns. One to Devontae Adams on a short pass inside on the goal line, and then one to Tyler Higbee. No, not Tyler, to Colby Parkinson in the red zone. So Rams managed to score a few times close. And unfortunately, so you did have that right there. So that played a big factor in the Rams winning this one. But ultimately, hey, to be fair, though, yes, the Rams didn't score as much as they're used to, but they were going against a really good Seattle Seahawks defense, because one thing we say is the Seahawks have had an excellent defense throughout the season. They've consistently came through and took care of business. And they're still sitting at 7-3. Even if they don't win the division, they'll still be possibly a number 5 or 6 seed. It'll be a threat even going on the road in the wild card. Now, so for the Rams, they get the win. It's not as pretty offensively as it usually was, but they're going against a really good defense, and they got the win. Now, in terms of being a competitive game, this did live up to the moniker of game of the week. Unfortunately, in terms of being a high-scoring game, probably wasn't your game if you were looking for a lot of offense, but it did live up to the hype. It was a competitive battle, and the Rams maintained their supremacy in the NFC West. They easily put that, ever since that 49ers loss on Thursday night, they just put that right behind them. They've been balling out, and the Rams are on a nice little winning streak of their own. What is it, like 4 or 5 games now in a row they've won? So the Rams are on a winning streak, and they're building a lot of momentum heading into a Sunday night showdown against the Buccaneers this upcoming week. So they've been 1, 2, 3, 4. So they've won 5 straight since that loss to the 49ers in overtime back in October. The Rams are just putting that right behind them. Come back, win a bunch of games, and guess what? Momentum is starting to roll in their favor. And this is going to be, and now it's possible, could come down to a tiebreaker, between the Eagles and the Rams. But we got to wait and see how that plays out. But for now, credit to the Rams for finding a way to get a win. They have an excellent all-around team. And for the Seattle Seahawks, they're not down yet. I think just one game, they'll put it behind them, come back stronger, and continue to win games. But it's also games like this that, as far as Sam Darnold goes, on one hand, I say, look, it's just one bad game, put it behind you, move on. But it's also 4 interceptions against the Rams, mind you, the same team that he flamed out with last year in Minnesota in the wild card round, which played a key role in the Vikings' decision to move to J.J. McCarthy and take a chance with him. Now, Sam Darnold comes back with a chance to redeem himself against the Rams, and he throws 4 picks. He just cannot get it going against that Rams team, and they've had his number. So this is where I question Sam Darnold as a true, legit option at quarterback. Well, in recent years, he's turned out to be a solid QB. I just don't see him as a true long-term option, and it's games like this. Do I still see the Seahawks as a potential contender in the NFC? Are they still going to make the playoffs? Absolutely, but games like this from Sam Darnold are why I'm not sold on a Sam Darnold-led team making a Super Bowl run. So while the Seahawks are still a really good team, they're still going to make the playoffs. I don't see them as Super Bowl contenders because of this. And now we switch gears to the AFC West, and we're going to talk about the game. This was the Denver Broncos to me. This was their let's see how good you really are game. They were 8-2, but going into this game, there were a few questionable wins, let's just say. There was the win against the Giants where they had to come back, and there was the game against the Raiders on Thursday night. It was kind of like, all right, are they really a great 8-2 team? I said, let the Kansas City game decide how good they really are. Because while Kansas City wasn't as strong as they are in recent years, they're still a formidable foe. And ultimately, the Denver Broncos won this game. Last second field goal, they once again continued to show their grit, continued to find ways to win in tight games, and that's what they did once again. The Denver Broncos did what they had to. I mean, Bo Nix, he had 295 yards. You have Jaleel McLaughlin got a touchdown in this one. Ultimately, in this one, this was more of a defense later in the game. A lot of field goals in this one, but hey, the Denver Broncos found a way to win, and that's what matters most. And now you're at 9-2. Excellent position here. You have Will Lutz again comes through. Looking like Will Lutz is the most valuable kicker in the AFC. While Brandon Aubrey's the best kicker in the NFL, I'll say Will Lutz is the most valuable kicker because he's played a lot of kicks that have played roles in the Broncos winning. And for sure, you got to believe this week, AFC Special Teams Player of the Week, Week 11, Will Lutz by far. As for the Denver Broncos, though, you're sitting at 9-2. Ultimately, it's about how winning games and how you win them. And it's a bit of a breath of fresh air, too, from a fan perspective. After Kansas City has dominated that division for the past decade, going back to when Peyton Manning retired, now here you go. You finally get a new team ready to break through and take hold as the AFC West Kings. We thought that might be the case when the Broncos signed Russell Wilson, but not quite. They had to wait for Bo Nix, wait a few years to get it done, and they did. Now, Kansas City, we're starting to notice. They need a little bit more than just Travis Kelce and Pat Mahomes. Now, Kelce, to be fair, we kind of knocked him for some of his play at times. He's rebounded recently and played really good, but it's still not enough for Kansas City to close the gap and stay in the mix. Plus, they gave up 3 sacks to this Broncos defense. And here, this was also on the flip. Well, I said it was the test for the Broncos. See how good they really are. It was also a test for Kansas City. See how far they've come as a team. See how far the Kansas City Chiefs have come. See how good their offense really is going against the elite Denver Broncos unit. But that's not the case. You once again see that Denver Broncos defense. We got to acknowledge them. Because a lot of people are putting the shine on Bo Nix as the star, but it's really the defense. Nick Bonito, Pat Surtain, they're the real stars for this Denver Broncos team. Absolutely. So even then, with all due respect to Bo Nix, but it's really the Denver Broncos defense in this one that's just really paving the way. They're third in yards allowed per game, 274. They have the most sacks with 49 on the season. Let's not forget, folks, that's right. The Denver Broncos they're easily the most clutch defense in the NFL currently because of all the teams that rank at the top of yards allowed, rank at the top of sacks. They're the best team out of them. So for that, I consider them the most clutch. I'll show you guys a graphic real quick. So here we go. Defensive leader, yards allowed. You got the Texans, Browns to the top, but then the Broncos sit third. Chargers in line. So you have 3, 4, and 5 sit there as the best teams. Then you get sacks. Denver Broncos have had the most sacks, 49 on the season. Clearly, they're the best team of this bunch thus far. So we see right there, ultimately, the Denver Broncos. What is up, Mitch? Mitch stopping by. Mitch last night, he streamed the Sixers win against the Clippers last night. Got to see Tyrese Maxey ball out. And as always, he's been a long-time loyal supporter of my content. So again, thanks for stopping by. And folks, all right, later tonight, I'll be back again on the network. Me and Agent Warrior X, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for Week 12 of the NFL Pick'ems. Put a few hot takes, talk a little bit about the main subjects from Week 11, go over Week 12 predictions. That'll be in store at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, exclusively on the Hardcore Sports Network. I'm going to stay tuned for that. And as I was saying, man, the Denver Broncos, I say they're the most elite defense for that reason right there. You saw the statistics yourself, so shout out to them. But for Kansas City, man, they're at that point they're going to have to make some changes this offseason. Try to maybe get a few more players, make a few changes because Mahomes leading the way for this team itself isn't getting the job done. They're going to need a little bit more than just that. So they'll have to go back to on board. I'm not counting them out yet at all, but obviously there still needs a little bit of work to be done. But for now, we just got to wait and see with Kansas City because I'm not counting them out yet. We'll see. Can they go on a December run to make the playoffs? We'll see. And the Denver Broncos, they continue to sit atop. The AFC, it's crazy. You got the Patriots, Broncos, and Colts sitting atop the AFC. We got some parity, folks. And now we switch to the NFC, back to the NFC West. This time the 49ers beat the Cardinals. And in this one, it couldn't have come at a better time for the 49ers. You had an embarrassing loss to the Rams last week, a team who you're competing with for first place in your division alongside the Seattle Seahawks. But for the Niners, the Cardinals were the perfect foe to beat up on, figuratively, put that game behind them, get Brock Purdy back with 3 touchdown passes, get him back into a rhythm against a team where he could easily shine against, get his confidence back up, and the Niners got just that in this one against the Cardinals. Purdy had 3 scores. He found George Kittle, his favorite target in this one. You even had Christian McCaffrey had 2 touchdowns, 13 carries, 81 yards. So McCaffrey looks like he's gotten his rhythm back, shaking off the rust from missing majority of last season. And it looks like the Niners are still going to be a formidable team in the NFC. I'm telling you, man, I know I keep saying this, but it will be a fun race for the NFC. It will be. So can't wait for December to see how the NFC playoff picture plays out. And speaking of NFC playoff picture, Mitch, if you're still here, it's time to talk a little bit about our team. I talked about this more in depth on a live stream yesterday. We're going to do some repeating real quick. Again, the Eagles defense shines. They played phenomenal against the Detroit Lions, but the offense looked sluggish. The play calling in particular, I don't know what's going on with Kevin Patullo. I'll put it this way. Vic Fangio is defensive coordinator for the Eagles, and Kevin Patullo as the signal caller offense are 2 polar opposites of each other. Vic Fangio is taking what we did last year on defense and expanding upon it, while the offense, Kevin Patullo is doing a complete 180 of what we got last year from Kellen Moore. Particularly, I mean, some people have said it as Eagles fans, Brian Johnson did a better job with A.J. Brown, and it's true. As bad as Brian Johnson was, at least he got A.J. Brown in the offense. And in this case, the Eagles, they kind of relied on the run game, but that's only because they give Saquon so many carries. They give him 26 carries, he got 80-something yards, but let's be real, that's at best a mediocre game right there from Saquon rushing the ball. And the offensive play calling is real predictable. But fortunately for the Eagles, this defense is absolutely lights out. Where you got Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis is now finally at his breakout year that he's gotten in shape. He's more athletic, and he's able to make moves he typically didn't before. He played a key role in that Cooper DeJean interception early where he tipped the ball up and allowed DeJean to get the pick. You still have Cooper DeJean. You still got Quinyon Mitchell. You still got Jalix Hunt starting to break out on his own. Andrew Makuba showing some potential. This Eagles defense is lights out, but their offense needs some work, particularly with the play calling. And for those that want to continue to criticize Jalen Hurts, the dude's found ways to continue to win games despite having a new signal caller every single season. It's not easy to continue to find ways to win games and be good enough to win and not turn the ball over when you got a different signal caller trying to drag you in a different direction each season. One season, you got to get adjusted to this guy. Next season, you got to adjust to this guy. Next season, you got to adjust to this guy. You're being dragged around in different directions as a quarterback. For other quarterbacks, it would be harder to adjust, and they wouldn't be able to handle it as well as Jalen Hurts did. So I got to give Jalen Hurts props for handling the constant changes at signal caller really well, because he's done that, and he's done it very maturely. He's handled a lot of pressure of shifting expectations, which we know in any business. In this case, being a sports franchise, getting paid to be a professional athlete, it's not easy to constantly adjust to shifting expectations. And for Jalen Hurts, with different signal callers, the expectations shift, but he finds ways to make the most of it. And for the Eagles, they got a key win here against the Lions. And for the Detroit Lions, I got to admit, Ben Johnson looks a lot more valuable for the Detroit Lions now than he did last season. Because last season when Ben Johnson was there as the offensive coordinator, their offense dominated. But this year, without Ben Johnson, we've seen flashes of it from the Lions, but their offense doesn't have the same spark. Meanwhile, Ben Johnson with the Chicago Bears as the head coach, not necessarily the same level of talent, but he's found ways to lead the Bears to victories and being in first place in the NFC North as of today. So Ben Johnson looks a lot more valuable to the Lions in hindsight by what he's done with the Bears. And for Jared Goff, I'll say this. He has to learn to play under pressure for the Lions to be contenders. Jared Goff, the biggest problem with him is he struggles under pressure when he doesn't have valuable weapons around him. Jared Goff's got to get better in these pressure situations in order for the Lions to truly be contenders. And I haven't seen that from him yet. So that's the big thing they got to improve there. So hats off to the Eagles on the win. And for the Lions, will they still make the playoffs? Oh, I'm sure they will, barring freak injuries to the whole team. But Jared Goff's got to find ways to play better in pressure situations for them. So congrats to the Eagles. We move right along. We got a big division rivalry game next week against, you probably guessed it, the Dallas Cowboys, who won on Monday night against the Raiders. So after a bye week, the Cowboys came back, defeat the Las Vegas Raiders by a score of 33-16. And ultimately, I mean, hey, a win's a win for the Cowboys. I got to say, Dak Prescott did do pretty good in this game, and the Cowboys found a way to get the win. Now, granted, it was against the Raiders, so remember, the Raiders are 2-8. Geno Smith has looked like the worst signing of the offseason. And the Cowboys, well, for one time, their defense managed to look halfway decent, only giving up 16 points. So, but that also says more about how awful Geno Smith has been. The fact you would have thought that maybe Geno would at least have one good game here against this Cowboys defense. You're like, all right, Geno, you thought maybe this would be Geno's a terrible signing, but he had at least one good game. Not in this case, bro. So, with all due respect, I mean, let's be real. The Cowboys defense, I think this is a lot more about Geno Smith than it does the Dallas Cowboys defense improving. It certainly does. But the Cowboys got the win. 4 passing touchdowns from Dak, who, mind you, has had a good season considering they stuck with a horrible defense. He's had a pretty good season. And as an Eagles fan, we saw week 1 that we know what Dak can do. He did a pretty good job against our secondary in the first half before that weather delay messed up both teams' offenses. So I'll talk about this more later in the week, but that could be a potential trap matchup for the Eagles defense. Maybe. But the Eagles defense has played much better than they did week 1. So that might also be a trap game for Dak too. But in this one against the Raiders, not much to say except Dak had a really good game, was able to shine, get some of his confidence going after the bye week, and just got to wait and see what the Cowboys do from here. They're 4-5-1. The odds of them making the playoffs are extremely, they technically still could, but I just don't see it happening. It's unrealistic in that tight NFC. So it's like, yeah, the Cowboys get the win here, good for their fans, but the odds of them winning that division, getting a playoff berth, are unrealistic. Yes, folks. So that's it for the main games this week. Now we're going to talk a little bit about the winners and losers in this one. So we're going to start the winners and losers. The three biggest winners. This is going to be our quick recap kind of. NFL Week 11, the three main winners are the Philadelphia Eagles defense, make up for a lackluster offensive performance, beat a Detroit Lions team who looked like a threat to have a great offensive game, but ultimately the Eagles defense came through, got a big win, keep that momentum going. They rolled at 8-2, and now they're ready for the Cowboys. Next, the Chicago Bears. Going into a potential trap game against the Vikings, the Bears found a way to win. And not only do they win, but they're now sitting at 7-3 in one of the best divisions in football. Tremendous win, tremendous job there. Great turnaround by Ben Johnson to get them to 7-3. So I give huge props to them there. And the Denver Broncos, even in a game where they had the far better record going into it, it was still going to be a true test game for the Broncos against Kansas City. They found a way to win, and they keep pace with the Patriots and Colts atop the AFC conference. So salute to the Broncos. Those are the three big winners. I'll put the Rams as an honorable mention because they got a much-needed win to stay in first place and stay in control of their conference. But the Week 11 losers in this one, the biggest ones I'll start, I got to go with Sam Darnold, because he went out there in a pressure situation and threw 4 interceptions and gave more leadway to his critics that say he's not a true franchise quarterback. This was a field day for those critics, and Darnold didn't do anything to prove them wrong in this case. He validated their point with a horrible game, so that's a big loss there. Another loss, the big loser, Los Angeles Chargers, going against the Jacksonville Jaguars as a 7-3 team entering the game, getting completely obliterated by the Jaguars, not losing a competitive game. You know, it would have been one thing if the Chargers lost a lower scoring close game because their offensive line was battered. That could be more forgivable loss against a competitive team like the Jaguars. But to get blown out by them when you were the clear-cut favorites, that's huge as far as being a loser for the week goes. So it's more so the way the Chargers lost that game. And then last but not least, my final loser of the week, the Atlanta Falcons. Not just for this week, but for consistently being competitive, but can never close a game. Even in a week where some people thought you might get the upset. A lot of people were actually thinking the Falcons had a shot at winning this game despite the difference in records, and ultimately they didn't. And they couldn't close a winnable game again. And mainly because their defense let Bryce Young, who's not known as a great statistical quarterback, break the Panthers franchise record for most yards in a single game by a quarterback. So I consider the Falcons big losers for that reason right there. So now that's that there. And real quickly, what I want to do is I want to show you guys the division standings right now so you can get a clear view of where each team stands right now. So we're going to go through this. I know ESPN's a little more trustworthy, but in this case, we should be able to do with this right here. So we got the AFC, hold on one second. Let's see if we can actually navigate this thing. Give me 1 second. We're going to share. So actually ESPN is going to do in this one. So we'll show you, and I can show you the playoff picture real quickly as well. So let's do that. Let's take a quick look at the standings, both conference and playoff picture. Start here with the AFC. You got the AFC's Patriots at 9-2. Bills sit at 7-3. Dolphins 4-7. Jets at 2-8. AFC North, Steelers are a game ahead of the Ravens at 6-4. Ravens at 5-5. The two teams haven't played each other yet. We'll see what happens. And you got the Bengals and Browns sitting at the bottom. AFC South, Colts are in cruise control, but the Jaguars are 2 games back. So it is possible, a long shot, but it is possible for the Jaguars to catch up. But then you got the Texans at 5-5 down, but not out, but unrealistic for me to see them making a playoff push. And then the Titans looking to maybe tank bowl champions for the second straight year. AFC West, you got the Broncos up front. Chargers, despite the loss, are still at 7-4. KC's at 5-5. Going to be a tough battle there, even for a wild card spot. And then the Raiders are dumpster fire. Now to the NFC, you got Eagles sit atop the NFC East, 4 games ahead of the Cowboys. Even if the Cowboys do find a way to win this game and we split with them like we usually do, it's still a long shot for anyone to catch momentum with them because you still got Washington, no real quarterback, 6-game losing streak. Giants a complete dumpster fire on a 5-game losing streak. Pretty safe to say Eagles will win, even if they do have a 2023-ish finish to the season. Then NFC North, it's entering. Bears 7-3 in first place, 3-game winning streak. Packers bounce back after 2 losses, 6-3-1. Then the Lions at 6-4. Vikings at 4-6. Then you got the NFC South. You got Bucks still sitting at 6-4. Panthers at 6-5. If the Bucks lose to the Rams this week, maybe the Panthers could be in the mix potentially. They're not. Now that I think about it, there's still a potential shot. I don't see it happening, but the Panthers could shock everyone if they win a bunch of games and win the division. I don't see that happening, but theoretically, it's still a shot. They got the Falcons and Saints at the bottom. NFC West, it's a dog race. It's a race there. It's a dog fight, I should say, metaphorically. You got the Rams, 8-2, Seahawks, 7-3, 49ers, 7-4, possibly all 3 teams making the playoffs or one team being odd team out with a winning record. Then you got the lowly Cardinals at 3-7. But now, speaking of playoff race, now that I mentioned it, let's take a look at where the playoff race stands for each conference. In the AFC, as of right now, you got Broncos with Patriots be tied for home field, Colts right behind, but that's only because they had their bye week. We'll see how that plays out late. Steelers are 4th as of now. Bills would sit at the 5th, Chargers at the 6th, and the Jaguars would be the final seed that would play the number 2 if the season ended today. Then behind that, you got Houston, Kansas City, and the Ravens tied for the 8th seed, but we still got time to determine that one. NFC, yeah, Eagles sit at top, tied with the Rams for home field. Eagles win tiebreak over Rams based off head-to-head when we beat them week 3. Then the Bears are at 7-3. The Bucks at 6-4. Then the Seahawks 7-3. Packers 6-3-1. 49ers 7-4. And then right below that, as of now, the Lions would be the odd team out between the NFC West and the NFC North. So I think by the end of the season, you could be seeing a team from the NFC West or the NFC North with a winning record missing the playoffs this year as the 8th seed. So as you see firsthand, it's a very tight race there in the NFC playoff picture. So I think we pretty much said everything we're going to say. For the NBA, man, there wasn't a real lot of big news out of the NBA this week. There wasn't. I mean, we've seen, it's like just not really that interesting a week. But this is early in the NBA season. You're getting around Thanksgiving time. Really, basketball doesn't pick up until around Christmas time. So around Christmas time, we'll get some more NBA general content in here. I might drop a few shorts on my channel where I might give you some NBA-related content. So right here on the channel, you'll probably get a little bit of NBA-related content there. So be on the lookout for that one there. So with that being said, guys, that's it for episode 35 of the 3-Point Blitz. Next week will be episode 36, pre-Thanksgiving. We'll see what we got in store for you next week. But later tonight, exclusively on the Hardcore Sports Network, Week 12, NFL Pick'ems, your boy Nicky Stees, Agent Warrior. We're going to recap Week 11, talk about the Week 12 games tonight, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So stay tuned, folks. That's all I got for you for now. Until next time, it's your boy Nicky Stees signing off. Catch y'all later.